All right, so we have a presentation that we prepared for you on both products, and I'm going to start. I'm going to start off. I'm going to talk about Domino Volt. Go through the product, the direction that we're taking the product, and then you're going to hear about MX, and then what we're going to do is some positioning, so you understand, why two products and when one versus the other, etc. Okay, so Domino Volt. Go to the next chart. So one of the best ways to describe a software product, at least I feel, is by describing the problems that it addresses. And the focus of Domino Volt is what I'd call the citizen developer. And the scenarios that we typically run into are, business users are relying on spreadsheets, they're emailing documents around to collect and process information, or perhaps things are manual. Oftentimes you'll see that they're struggling to put some innovation in place in the form of a system with their services delivery, or perhaps their product development or delivery. How do you do that as a business user? You want to enable the business users who are closest to the action of what's going on in the organization to be able to think and innovate. So a tool that caters to them will allow them to do that. Oftentimes the alternative to a citizen developer sort of approach is to go to IT in traditional development technologies. In many organizations, there's a backlog and there's a wait time. And often the cost of developing apps can be a bit more expensive on the IT channel versus doing it yourself in the business. And the last couple of bullets there are really more oriented towards the IT side of things. If you're an IT manager in an organization and you see that there are different areas of the business that are using, quote, shadow IT platforms, this is an opportunity to bring in a tool and put it in place in a secure, proven environment, Domino, and provide some safeguards for your users, and also to be able to connect them to systems in a way that protects the data sources and makes sense for the business. Go to the next chart. So the value proposition around Domino Volt is this idea of building solutions easily without making complex IT decisions. So I don't need to think about the data sources, the databases. I don't need to think about the security protocols. Simply just go in and build an app. So it harkens back to the early days of Notes when things were very simple and you simply just design some forms and some views. And you can evolve your solution over time with minimal, if any, IT intervention in what you're doing. And I talked about the speed, how quickly you're able to build apps, the fact that you don't need to set up a database, it's all implicit, the fact that you've got one tool that can be used to build a variety of application types, anything from a simple survey to a tracking system, maybe looking at different assets in the organization, to a workflow system. Maybe you've got some resource requests that need to go through some approval cycle with notifications, etc. So it's a tool that can address a wide variety of application types. We see competitors with some good tools in certain areas, but often they're pigeonholed to do certain things well, and just those certain things. And then this idea of business user-friendly integration with IT governed data sources, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. Let's go to the next chart. So we've been in market for a year, just a little over a year, and we've got well over 400 customers with the product. And this April 28th, we released version 103. So this is the 4th release of Domino Volt. And the major themes, the major enhancements to this product, I would categorize in 3 different areas. The first is this idea of building apps, not just forms. So if you've got some familiarity with the product, you know that it has been very form-centric in the past. When you went into design mode in the product, it assumed that you were designing a form. Well, now there's the ability to design what we're calling an app page, which is not a form. An app page is a page that doesn't have an implicit data structure with it. It doesn't participate in the workflow stages. It's just a page that you can display information, interact with information. You could use it as a front-end menu. You could use it as a dashboard. You've got all the advantages of your resources being shared amongst everything in your app, you know, your images, CSS, etc., as well as the ability to use rules to show and hide things. You've got the JavaScript API that functions there. So it's a first-class citizen in the solution that you're creating, the application that you're creating. It's just it's a page that's not a form. Oftentimes in the past, people use forms in this way, and they simply just hid the submit button. Another piece that we added in this theme is navigation. So you now have the ability to put a button, a link, or any element on your page that can navigate to any other page in your app. Could even navigate to a page in a different app. And you can do this just with some settings in the properties panel. You no longer need to calculate the URL structure, put in code to accommodate differences in domains if you're bringing the app from one deployment to another. So this is much simpler now, and it makes for a better experience with the finished application that you create. The second major theme that we introduced with this is integration. So there is a best-of-breed technology inside of HCL called HCL Link, and this technology is all about data integration and transformation. It's been around for a while, and there's a new focus with the product for embedded use in other HCL products. So we looked at this a little over a year ago, and it makes perfect sense to integrate it into Domino Volt, to make it part of Domino Volt. And what we have now is the capability to integrate with not just REST endpoints, but also things like relational databases, SOAP services, and other sort of sources that you have that you need to provide to your Domino Volt users. Even with REST services, there's tremendous value that this adds that the native capabilities in Domino Volt did not have. It's got the ability to acquire the OAuth token, to manage the refresh of that token. It's able to introspect your data sources to understand the different objects that a user could potentially read or update. It's much more intelligent and useful in its approach to integrating with many different REST APIs that are out there. And there's also a generic REST API adapter that is included with this as well. So the inclusion of this technology opens up a world of new possibilities of providing Domino Volt application developers with additional entries in the catalog that they see today. That allows them to connect their apps to different sources, whether it be to populate a table, or perhaps a drop-down, or maybe update a record in an external system. You know, so there's a tremendous power now with this, and the future of this is to do more with Link and to bring more of the data transformation capabilities of Link into Volt. So what I mean by that is with the next version of the product, 104, you will see the ability to include what we're calling maps and flows in the integration. So I could have a flow that says, go off to this relational database and get the customer name and maybe a key value, and then go to this other database or source, and then use that key value to get some contract information. Combine that, and then return it to Domino Volt. So there I would have a map with two different flows and how to join the data. And then I would have a flow which is the sequence of the different integration calls that I need to make to pull the data together. So that's the sort of capability that we're talking about with the future of this, and what we will see with HCL Link in Domino Volt. Now, the third major theme of this April release is doing more with your Domino investment. So in the summer, we introduced reading Domino data, and with this release, we've introduced create, update, and delete. So now you've got full CRUD services against Domino data, and you also have the ability to run Domino agents from your application. All right, next chart. All right, so in the next release of the third quarter, we're going to see something called a data grid. So this is a new component that will be added to the palette to display and interact with data. Different from the table in that the table is really designed around data entry. This will be a React-based control that will fit more of the dashboard style of application pattern. Next chart. And then, finally, the major focus of 104 is workflow. So we're looking at a major overhaul on the user experience for building and designing workflows, as well as some additional capabilities to add. So there's great power there today, but it's not entirely intuitive. So we hope to improve that quite a bit. All right, we continue on.
Hello, hey, this is Suhas. I'm the product manager for Volt MX. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Volt MX. Volt MX is the newest entry into the HCL software. It is an MXDP, which is basically a multi-experience development platform, which means it is built to be able to build an application for anything like a phone or a tablet or a desktop or a kiosk, like an ATM machine, or check-in at an airport counter, so to speak, wearables like your Apple Watch, Android Watch, chatbots, IoTs, right? And it can build true native applications, hybrid applications, web applications, that is PWA, responsive web, and all that stuff. From a Volt MX platform perspective, it is composed of a few components. Flare is basically our omni-channel widget library, which is basically ensuring that customers or developers who are writing the code in Iris using either visual workflow or using JavaScript, that gets translated to all the different OSs and different endpoints that it has to build for, while still maintaining it as true native output. Right? Iris is our IDE, which is the tool with which we build the applications. Foundry is the backend. I'll go into a bit more detail into each of these. Right? Foundry is the data integration and authentication pieces of it. We also have built-in DevOps and automated testing, along with cloud hosting. And we have a marketplace to make it easier and faster to consume components and building blocks of the application, so that app developers do not have to build applications from scratch. And Volt MX can connect to any kind of backend. We'll go into this also in a bit more detail. Right. So let's start with Iris. Iris is basically the IDE, the tool with which you're building the applications. It is basically both a design and a development tool. The tool is WYSIWYG. So basically, when you are creating any form or page for an application, right, whether it is a mobile or tablet or desktop, you can see exactly how it is going to look while you're designing the screen itself without having to build it. you can actually go and change the form factor directly from, say, an iPhone 10 to an iPhone 8, or different form factors, like with the larger size or the regular size. You can change that, and you can see how the output is going to be rendered without even building the application, just at design time, while you're just dragging and dropping widgets from the visual canvas to assemble how the look and feel is going to be, right? And the tool supports reusable components. So basically, it can have a component which has the visual design of it, as well as the data integration piece, the authentication piece, and all that together as one single component. So once you build that component, you can reuse it within your application. You can publish it to a marketplace, and somebody else can also use it. So if I've built in a login component, I don't have to build it again. I can just look at the marketplace to see what is the most good looking, or what suits my requirement best, and I can just pull that code directly from marketplace into my project and start from there. And it also has a data panel directly on the IDE itself, which is linking into Foundry so as to enable data integration pieces right from the UI. And this is a new kind of functionality that we brought in recently, which is called as a Storyboard Flow. So while you're building an application with Volt MX, it can get really big. And I mean, in the sense, usually B2E, B2C applications, and even applications for 200, 250 forms with the entire retail banking have been built on the Volt MX platform. So if you have to know how the navigation is flowing from one page to another, how this is being designed and all that, the Storyboard Flow helps understand that very well. So even when you are at a requirement phase, you can create the storyboard flow of the forms and see how the navigation has to be. You can link it and organize the app flow. And you can also design the, with the storyboard, how it is going to be different for different channels when you are building. So for example, the flow is going to be different for a desktop because the desktop has a much bigger real estate than mobile, right? So you can design different different components for different form factors too. This slide is showing the visual workflow component of Volt MX. So though Volt MX is a low code, and it can also support for some of the features completely no code. So you can literally just write your business logic, not necessarily write in the sense you can just reuse a visual workflow kind of a thing to check for some things, make a service call, throw an alert, or even do some simple business rules to see if this is the flag that you're checking for something, or navigate from form A to form B, right? So you can create entire applications with the visual workflow tool as well, right? And this also supports the drag and drop. It supports event-driven design, so it doesn't have to be triggered by a user. It can be asynchronous. It could be looking for a specific event to happen in an external system, and based on that, it can continue the logic on the application. And the workflows also promote reusability. You can reuse workflows in different places. The same workflow, if you want to use a section of the workflow in a different place in the same application or a different application, even that is possible. Flare, as I said, is basically the omni-channel widget engine. This is what is the native framework, so to speak. So this is ensuring that the code that is written by the app developer in either the visual workflow, which also gets translated to JavaScript, or in JavaScript using the APIs that are exposed by the platform, it gets rendered into the actual iOS or Android or web or Windows outputs, right? So that 100% translation happens with the Flare engine. And this also supports PWA. And though the platform exposes, say, 90-95% of the capability that an usual app developer would need, or in some cases even 100%, right? There might be some APIs that we are not supporting out of the box. So for those, it also supports extension. So if there is a specific API, like getting, say, a battery percentage from an OS, which is specific to the manufacturer, because Android, has so many different manufacturers, and specific manufacturers, the different API. If we are not supporting it from the platform, we still support extensions so that you can write a native function interface and go directly to that API using Flare. You just write like one line of code and you can go directly through to the OS to get into the native functions. Foundry is basically the middleware portion of it, but it is not just a middleware. It is doing a lot of things. So Foundry has a lot of SDK, so you can build an application using the Volt MX Iris, which is the IDE that we talked about. But if developer wants to write a application using Android Studio or Xcode and want to use the backend portion of it from Foundry, they can still do that. We support all these client SDKs. It also has a developer portal so that it is all accessible via REST API to be used by a different platform as well. And it also can connect to hundreds of different backends using the built-in connectors that it has. And if there is a specific type of a system like an mainframe or something that is not that common, you can still extend it with custom JavaScript or Java-based services, where we don't have out-of-the-box built-in connector. You can write your own connector easily and then use that too. It also has built-in API management, built-in analytics, DevOps, as well as security. So you can have continuous CI/CD, built-in testing during check-in, and all that happens out of the box. This is just showing another view of Volt MX. So from a service monitoring perspective, even the services that are hosted, it is continuously monitored, and you can set custom alerts, like if the threshold goes beyond a certain thing, or if there are certain error rates, all that can also be controlled by app monitoring settings. So it can send an email alert if there are certain number of errors at a certain time, or the performance is degrading. It can send warning or threshold, and all this is built into the platform. Now let's move on to the positioning. So we looked at Domino Volt and Volt MX, which are both app dev platforms. So when do you use what, right? So Marty, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I alluded to before that Domino Volt is really focused on the citizen developer, which can be a business user, could also be somebody in IT that is embracing kind of the citizen developer pattern of building things, which is IT people like easy things as well. So the key, and I mentioned this earlier, is I don't have to worry about APIs and databases and security protocols and all that kind of stuff. I just simply go in and I build my app, and I focus on the needs of the business and the things that make it special. The speed that you can build the app, the breadth of what you can build, whether it's workflow or general purpose tracking applications. The ease that Domino Volt developers can use external data that's been prepared for them by IT, right?
Yep. So from a Volt MX perspective, it is meant to be a low-code platform for app dev and deployment professionals, right? So it's targeted more at a developer perspective, but there are some components which are more low code, but it is not intended as a business developer tool, so to speak. So the target for Volt MX is, if you want to deliver true native applications with the full-fledged, native functionality, like especially when you want to go into the innovation section, like you want to target wearables, augmented reality, virtual reality, chatbots, or using full-fledged functionality, offline synchronization, and deeper integration into the OS, you are going to look at Volt MX. Also, Volt MX is designed to be a pixel-perfect tool to build great-looking B2C as well as B2E or B2B applications. But the look and feel is a what to say very important part for Volt MX. Also, because it's a multi-experience development platform, it is cross-platform. So even if you're a professional developer, you want great developer productivity. You don't want to go and build the same application for iOS and Android or web. You want to write the code once and ensure the same logic works everywhere. It has Foundry built in, so which it has integration into all the authentication and backend pieces out of the box, right? And it, as we showed, it has significant out of the box low code capabilities too. Adi, do you want to start with this?
Yeah, so another positioning chart. We'll just go through the table. So, we're looking at with Domino Volt, business users, citizen developers. I mean, if you know something about JavaScript, CSS, that's great. That's kind of a bonus. We're building web apps, and they can be mobile-friendly web apps. The style of applications, they tend to be, form-oriented. I'm capturing information, tracking. I'm filling out a form. It's a request or something. It's going through an approval process. The way that I build these apps is in a browser. Code required? Well, you don't need any code, but if you want to take advantage of the JavaScript API, you can extend functionality and behaviors. The attributes is very visual. It's quick. You build a little bit, you save, you preview, you deploy. That's it. And you can create full-fledged applications in hours, and everybody can be a builder. And the last point I would add is the applications that you tend to build are probably more internal-facing than your B2C sort of applications, which those tend to have much higher level of scrutiny when it comes to the look and feel. All right, on to you.
Yep.
Source.
So Volt MX again, it's targeted more from digital designers and app dev professionals, right? And we said that it is for targeting different types of outputs: variables, web, native mobile, and yeah, the app style, app complexity is usually higher when you are looking at a Volt MX application. You're looking at to build more something that can pass any kind of scrutiny, kind of a thing, right? Consumer grade, like the biggest retail chain, one of the bigger retail chains will be an application that is built with the Volt MX kind of a thing. And very complex mobile apps, something that needs lots of modules, lots of forms, lots of functionality, like a full-fledged web application. What to say, like a say you have a banking application with so many different modules, loans, credit cards, and all that. That kind of a thing, that complex architecture and stuff is something that Volt MX is good at handling. And IDE, yes, Volt MX needs an Iris IDE. The Iris IDE is a Node.js based IDE, and that has to be installed on the local developer system to connect to Volt MX and build the application. It is a dev tool only. At runtime it uses Foundry, but to build the application you need Iris. Code required, as I said, you can do very small basic things with no code, but primarily it uses JavaScript as the code for writing from the application developer perspective. Some of the code in the backend can be written with either JavaScript or Java, but if you know JavaScript, you are good enough. All the 100% capability that the platform has is available just with JavaScript. From an attributes, we talked that there are visual and manual methods for coding, and it also has interfaces for the extensions. Getting started, we can start from a designer. So basically, it has Volt MX has integration to tools like Sketch and Power, Adobe Photoshop as well. So if the designer is already developing visual designs from that, you can directly import that and start in this. Or you can use, because Volt MX is a WYSIWYG, and we showed the forms designer as well as the storyboard view, the designers can design directly using Volt MX as well. And it also has a basic functionality for creating a basic app directly by reading a spreadsheet. Speed of delivery, this is typically for bigger applications, so it's probably weeks. And usually you have professional developers and designers working on Volt MX. I think we're out of time, and we're also done with the content.